On December 7, 2009, in the small town of West Valley City, Utah, USA, a mysterious disappearance occurred. The victim was Susan Powell, a young mother who suddenly vanished without leaving a single trace. The police launched an investigation, but everything was mere speculation. There was no valuable clue. It was as if Susan had simply evaporated into thin air. There were many suspicions involving her father-in-law, Steve, who seemed obsessed with his daughter-in-law's beauty. However, nothing was certain. So where did Susan go? Could she have encountered something dangerous? Subscribe to our channel to explore this story with us. West Valley City, Utah, where the incident occurred, is a small, peaceful town surrounded by valleys and snowy mountains. Although located amid majestic nature, West Valley City is an extremely fast-growing area. New houses are springing up alongside old neighborhoods, creating a contrast between the past and present. This area has become a living choice for many families seeking stability. But now Susan's disappearance has changed everything. The story of a woman who vanished suddenly has left a big question mark in the community. What really happened that night? The main character of our story is Susan Powell. She was born on October 16, 1981, in the state of Washington. Since childhood, she had a relatively comfortable and affluent life. Her family's upbringing helped Susan become a person full of kindness. As she grew older, Susan gradually showed herself to be an outgoing girl, easily striking up conversations with people. Working as a hairstylist gave her the opportunity to meet many people and visit various places, expanding her social circle. In 2000, when she was 19, fate seemed to have arranged for Susan to meet Josh Powell at a church in Washington state. Josh, born on January 20, 1976, was a tall, gentle man with an attractive appearance. In particular, their faith helped them connect with each other. Susan and Josh quickly became close friends, sharing everything in life. Their love blossomed naturally, and shortly after, they became a couple. Their relationship developed quickly. After just 6 months of dating, Josh realized that Susan was someone he might never find again, so he decided to propose to her. And, of course, there was no reason for Susan to refuse. But right from their wedding day in April 2001, Susan began to feel an inexplicable unease. She noticed something unusual when her father-in-law, Stephen Powell, was always by her side with a video camera in hand. Although he said he just wanted to capture family memories, most of his recordings focused on Susan, especially close-up shots of her face. This made Susan feel uncomfortable. When she told Josh about her discomfort, he hesitated a bit but quickly reassured her, saying that his father was just overly excited on their wedding day. The young couple's life was quite happy but didn't last long. In 2002, on the anniversary of their wedding, Susan and Josh started facing financial difficulties. Life became tough, and they couldn't afford their rent. Josh suggested they temporarily move in with his father, Steve, to save on expenses. Although feeling uncomfortable, Susan agreed, hoping that with some effort, everything would eventually stabilize. However, once they moved in, the haunting memories of the wedding resurfaced. Steve continued his strange behavior, making Susan feel uneasy. At first, Susan only noticed Steve's constant gaze following her, but then she began to discover even more disturbing signs. He secretly filmed her at home and even stole underwear from her laundry basket. It didn't stop there. Susan found out that Steve collected trash she had thrown away, sorted it into plastic bags, and labeled them with dates. The most disturbing part was when she took a shower. There were occasional strange sounds, sometimes heavy breathing from someone. This terrified her, and she couldn't feel comfortable living in this house anymore. Susan told Josh about her father-in-law's odd behavior and the strange things she noticed, suggesting they find another place to live. However, Josh was indifferent, saying that she was overthinking things and that her prolonged anxiety might be causing her thoughts to become negative. Susan had no choice but to endure the feeling of insecurity, as the couple's financial situation was still quite limited. If Steve's behavior had happened occasionally, she might have been able to ignore it, but it was happening more and more frequently. She could no longer endure this sickening obsession. Finally, Josh agreed, and the two moved out to live on their own. Susan breathed a sigh of relief. thinking she could escape Steve's obsessive attention. But things were not that simple. Steve could not accept losing the daughter-in-law he was obsessed with. He often visited Susan and Josh's house under the pretense of visiting the grandchildren, but in reality, it was to continue monitoring and obsessing over her. He would even wait outside for hours just to see Susan, in case the couple was out and the house was locked. Perhaps, like me, you too would feel chills down your spine at this man's disturbing behavior. In the summer of 2003, Josh and Susan finally agreed to move to another state to escape family issues. But Steve would not allow that to happen. Knowing that Josh was out one evening, Steve went to Susan's house uninvited. He began a conversation with her, pretending to be caring and concerned. Furthermore, he tried to sit close to her, expressing his longing and affection for her. In such situations, Susan would always choose to change the subject and avoid him. In 2004, after moving to West Valley City, Utah, Susan and Josh put the past behind them and started a new life with the hope of building a happy family. Everything seemed to go quite smoothly. Susan felt immense joy as she welcomed two sons, born in 2005 and 2007. From a young, energetic woman, Susan had now become a devoted mother to two healthy and lovable children. In 2008, Susan began working full-time as a real estate agent, while Josh was unemployed. This could have been the beginning of future cracks in their marriage. Josh became increasingly controlling and possessive. He began managing every expense Susan made, not allowing her the freedom to use the money she earned, and he showed anger when she spent on family necessities. Being unemployed, Josh also began hanging out with friends, no longer focusing on the family as he used to. Running out of money, he started taking loans for his expenses. His debt kept growing until he disclosed that he owed a total of $200,000. The financial burden on the family weighed heavily on Susan's shoulders, as she had to both care for the young children and work to pay off the debt. The pressures from family and work began to leave her feeling exhausted. Family life grew increasingly tense. Josh lived extravagantly while controlling all of Susan's spending. Gradually, from a cheerful and positive woman, Susan began to fall into depression, feeling trapped with no way out of her marriage. Following the typical pattern, most couples would be considering divorce at this point, but fate led Susan in a different direction. On December 6, 2009, a Sunday, Susan took her children to church as usual. That afternoon, she welcomed a friend who came over to visit. Everything seemed perfectly normal. But by the morning of December 7, 2009, the teachers at her children's school noticed that her two boys did not arrive as usual. They called Susan but received no response. They also called Josh, but he did not pick up. Sensing something was wrong, the teachers reported the situation to the police. A team of officers was dispatched to Susan's house to check on the situation. When they arrived, they found the house locked from the inside out. During this time, the police received additional calls from Susan's colleagues and friends, all unable to reach her, prompting them to request a welfare check. A sense of unease filled the air, but the police hesitated as there was no justifiable reason to break into the house. However, fearing that something bad had happened, they decided to break down the door to enter. Inside, the police found the house completely empty, with no signs of an accident or struggle. The only thing that raised suspicion was that the family car was missing. After thoroughly examining the house, police found two peculiar details. First, Susan's wallet was neatly placed on the bedroom table, containing all her ID, keys, cash, and credit cards. The second suspicious point was that the living room sofa appeared to have been freshly cleaned, with two fans blowing directly on it, despite no one being home. By 5 p.m., as it grew dark, Josh finally arrived home with the two young children. The police immediately questioned him about Susan's absence, but he calmly responded that he had taken the kids camping and knew nothing about his wife's disappearance. Suspicious, the police took Josh to the station for questioning, while other officers temporarily looked after the children until relatives could arrive. Another team began interviewing neighbors and family friends. The interrogation with Josh began with his bizarre explanation. At around 2 a.m. on December 7th, thinking it was still Sunday, He took the kids camping and didn't realize his mistake until morning. When he woke up at 7 a.m., he realized it was Monday. However, since they were already there, he let the kids play a bit longer before heading home in the afternoon. The police found Josh's story contradictory and absurd. First, no one would take young children camping at 2 a.m. in freezing weather, let alone without any reasonable explanation for Susan's absence. Secondly, Josh had stopped at a car wash on his way back. This was particularly unusual as it was a snowy day and no one would wash their car in such weather. When inspecting Josh's car, the police discovered more strange details. The car was packed with camping gear, but most of it was brand new and unused. Even more surprising was the discovery of Susan's pink mobile phone in Josh's car, raising suspicion that he knew exactly where his wife was. When asked about Susan's phone found in his car, Josh appeared flustered and explained that she had lost it previously, but his answer was unconvincing. During the investigation, the police noticed several scratches on the back of Josh's hand, suggesting he might have been involved in some altercation. When questioning the couple's neighbors, the police heard accounts of Josh's strange behavior before Susan's disappearance. A neighbor reported seeing him running around the house collecting towels and loading them into the washing machine in a peculiar manner. Currently, the available information only raised more suspicions, rather than providing substantial evidence for the investigation. The police shifted focus to their 4-year-old son, Charlie. Charlie said that his mother went camping with the family, but did not return with them. He also remembered her staying at a place with flowers and crystals. This could have been the place where Susan was kept, or worse, buried. However, Charlie was too young to provide further details about the location. As for Josh, he consistently denied any involvement in Susan's disappearance and insisted he had no knowledge of what happened to her. Nevertheless, the police continued to suspect him and seized his car and some household items for further examination. Additionally, while inspecting Susan's safe deposit box at the bank, the police discovered a handwritten letter from her. In it, Susan expressed fear about her deteriorating marriage, writing that if she died, it might not be an accident. Despite this, the investigation seemed to be hitting a dead end, with everything still based on suspicion and Josh remaining the primary suspect. A week after Susan's disappearance, Josh quickly filed paperwork to withdraw funds from her account. This raised further suspicion among the police, as it suggested he may have planned to harm her in advance. Investigating the family's past, the police decided to approach Josh's father, Steve, for additional information. The interrogation was tense, as Steve showed discomfort when Susan was mentioned, insinuating that she was too close to him, even implying that Susan had tempted him. Although this information had not been verified, it further complicated the case. Just as the police were struggling with the investigation, a new lead surfaced. At school during an art lesson, Charlie drew a strange picture depicting a person lying in the trunk of a car. When asked, Charlie said he was drawing his mom sleeping. In the following days, he often drew pictures involving guns and told fragmented stories about his mother. This information from Charlie immediately drew the attention of the police, as it could serve as strong indirect evidence linking Josh to the disposal of Susan's body. However, this clue was still insufficient for the investigation to make a breakthrough. In January 2010, less than a month after Susan's disappearance, Josh moved in with his father in Washington, abandoning their home in Utah. In 2011, the police received information that Josh's brother, Michael, had sold his Ford to a scrapyard for only $100, a price far below its actual value, which caught the police's attention. When the police located the car a year later, forensic testing still detected traces of human decomposition, which increased suspicions that Michael might have helped Josh dispose of Susan's body. Despite the police's efforts to investigate, monitor, and eavesdrop, Josh left no clear evidence that could lead to his arrest. News of Susan's disappearance continued to spread and became a focal point for the media. In September 2011, following a shocking interview on ABC News with Susan's sister, Utah police learned of Steve's disturbing behavior toward his daughter-in-law. The police immediately obtained a warrant to search Steve's house in Washington, where Josh and his 2 sons were also living at the time. At this residence, investigators found videos showing Steve stalking and secretly recording Susan, both inside and outside the house. Additionally, there were numerous audio recordings with hauntingly detailed descriptions of Susan's body, along with videos showing Steve smelling her underwear. These images sparked a huge public outcry. Furthermore, the police also seized disturbing journal entries Steve had written, detailing instances when Susan complained to Josh, and Josh shared those complaints with him. These were the very details we heard at the beginning of this video. With this evidence, Steve was convicted of violating Susan's privacy and other inappropriate acts, resulting in a 2.5-year prison sentence. The court also immediately revoked Josh's custody of the children and granted custody to Susan's parents. Josh was allowed to see his children twice a week under the supervision of a social worker. February 5, 2012. A fateful day. As scheduled, Josh went to Susan's parents' house to visit his 2 sons. After picking them up, Josh drove home with the boys, accompanied by a social worker for supervision. Upon reaching the house, Josh opened the door, pushed the social worker out, and then locked the door from the inside. The social worker panicked, banging on the door and shouting for Josh to open it, but he remained silent. Before she could call the police, a massive explosion occurred inside, and flames quickly engulfed the house. By the time firefighters and police arrived, it was too late. The fire, fueled by gasoline, was too intense. All rescue efforts at that point were futile. All 3 people inside had perished, and the remains recovered were almost completely burned to ashes. Susan's parents collapsed in grief upon hearing the news. They couldn't understand why Josh would take his 2 young children with him in death. They were so young. It was then that the police learned Josh had sent farewell emails to some friends and family, transferred $7,000, and named his brother Michael as the beneficiary of his life insurance policy. Nearly a year later, on February 11, 2013, Michael, the man the police suspected might have helped Josh dispose of Susan's body, jumped from a building to his death. All those thought to be connected to the case eventually passed away. Finally, on May 21, 2013, the investigation officially closed with no conclusive results and no definitive evidence was ever found. In the end, the case of Susan Powell's disappearance left an unanswerable void. To this day, Susan's body has not been found, and her case remains one of the most haunting family tragedies in America, reminding us of the value of truth and justice, which sometimes is never fully realized. This concludes our video. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel to follow more cases like this one, as we continue the pursuit of justice for those souls who have yet to find peace.
In 2012, in a remote village in Yunnan Province, China, a series of mysterious disappearances began to occur, disrupting the peaceful atmosphere of this rural area. The perpetrator was identified as a mentally disturbed man. The victims were brutally murdered, their bodies dismembered, and shockingly, some of their meat was even sold in the market, disguised as ostrich meat. He did this simply to satisfy his twisted desires. Due to the horrific nature of the case, this can be considered one of the most terrifying crimes in China's history. So, what are the details of this case? Subscribe to our channel to uncover it with us right now. The crime scene is set in Nanmen Village, Yunnan, China. This place is known for its beautiful natural scenery, surrounded by rolling mountains and crystal-clear streams. But beneath this tranquility, Nanmen Village has become infamous for a horrifying crime that has just been exposed. The villagers had never witnessed such a monstrous crime. On April 25, 2012, Han Yao, a 19-year-old young man from Kunming, mysteriously disappeared on his way to work. Yao left home at around 7 a.m. and began his day as usual. However, by the time he was expected at work, he was nowhere to be found. Since Yao was known to be diligent and always punctual, his unexplained absence without any prior notice was highly unusual. His colleagues tried to contact him, but Yao did not answer. They also called his family, who were equally unable to reach him. By midday, still without any news of Yao, his colleagues, sensing something was wrong, reported his disappearance to the police. As soon as the report was filed, the police launched an investigation. Strangely, no witnesses saw Yao after he left his house. Despite thorough checks, the police were unable to gather any clues about his whereabouts. Yao's parents, worried and desperate, reported the case to various media outlets, seeking help from the public. The fear of losing their only son left them restless. Around the same time, the police discovered that Yao was not the only case. Over the years, several young people had also mysteriously disappeared in the area. In the last 5 years, since 2007, at least 17 people had gone missing in the area, most of them healthy young individuals between 12 and 19 years old. Each disappearance occurred at different times, but the common factor was that none of the victims left any trace, and none had been found after going missing. The villagers began to feel fearful, wondering if a serial killer was on the loose. The unsolved cases led to growing suspicion and fear, especially during nighttime. The authorities faced mounting pressure as the public strongly criticized the police's inability to solve the successive disappearances. Finally, under significant public pressure and the outrage of the victims' families, the police were forced to intensify their investigation. A large-scale search was initiated with the support of higher authorities. For the first time, investigators began to connect clues from individual cases, hoping to piece together the cases. However, they faced a major challenge as the disappearances spanned several years. The local police's previous indifference and lack of urgency meant that much evidence could have been lost. However, after reviewing the locations of the disappearances, the investigation team noticed a rather interesting pattern. Most victims had disappeared within a 700-meter radius of a man named Zhang Yongmin's house. Zhang Yongmin, 57 years old, was a reclusive man living alone in a dilapidated house on the outskirts. He was quiet and appeared frail. This time, Zhang attracted attention because he had a prior murder conviction. Leaving no stone unturned, the police placed Zhang under suspicion. To clarify any doubts and investigate Zhang's connection to the disappearances, the investigation team requested a search warrant from the court. And it wasn't long before the warrant was approved. As soon as investigators approached Zhang's house, they detected a faint, indescribable foul smell in the air. When the police knocked on the door, Zhang refused to open it and locked himself inside. With no cooperation from Zhang, the investigation team was forced to break down the door and enter forcibly. As soon as investigators took their first steps into the house, they began noticing suspicious signs. Rows of jars filled with strange liquids lined the shelves, creating an eerie, cold atmosphere. Alongside them were numerous knives and scissors hanging throughout the house, with the overpowering stench transforming the room into something more like a slaughterhouse than a home. The investigators paid special attention to an old freezer hidden in a corner of the kitchen. The closer they got, the more unbearable the smell became. When they opened it, the team was met with a horrifying sight. One officer even vomited on the spot. Scattered human bones, partially decomposed, and several pieces of dried flesh hanging inside. None of them could believe what they were seeing. The horror didn't stop there. On examining the jars of liquid closely, they realized they contained human eyeballs preserved in alcohol. After these terrifying discoveries, the investigation team immediately sealed off the house and began collecting every piece of evidence for forensic analysis. Continuing their thorough search throughout Zhang's home, they found numerous large vats and jars, each containing human body parts neatly arranged and organized. These were covered in thick layers of salt, resembling ancient food preservation methods to prevent spoilage. The team estimated the total weight of the body parts to be around 180 kilograms, an astonishing amount that highlighted the scale and brutality of this crime. Further searching led the police to find a strange poster in Zhang's bedroom, with something unusual about its material. Upon closer inspection, investigators were stunned to realize the poster was actually a painting on human skin. Testing revealed it was the skin of Chan Tower, a 17-year-old boy who had recently disappeared in the area. In Zhang's backyard, the police discovered numerous arms and legs buried in the ground, likely because his house had run out of space to hide them. By this point, The police were nearly certain that Zhang Yongmin was responsible for the recent disappearances. However, when questioned about the body parts in his home, Zhang coldly replied, "I don't know," showing discomfort and evasiveness. Despite gathering a significant amount of evidence, the complexity and horror of the case made the investigators feel as if they were wandering through a maze. The investigation continued. When they examined food in the kitchen, the police noticed pieces of meat mixed with human hair, partially eaten. It seemed Zhang had been in the middle of a meal when the police arrived. And this was no animal meat. It was human flesh. Zhang had been eating human meat. By now, Zhang's house was surrounded by police, and curious villagers gathered around. From here, an even more shocking revelation surfaced. Zhang had previously brought ostrich meat to the village market, selling it to the locals. Whenever someone asked about the source of the meat, Zhang would simply say it was ostrich without further explanation. Now, the truth was clear. The meat Zhang had sold was actually from his missing victims. Why would a middle-aged man commit such horrific acts? Let's delve into his past to find out. Zhang Yongming was born in 1955 in a remote, rural area of Yunnan Province, China. He was the youngest of 3 brothers, 2 of whom had also served time in prison. His parents used violence as a method of discipline, leaving Zhang isolated and filled with resentment as he grew up. In 1974, when Zhang was 19, he met Lucy at a small village market. Lucy, a girl of the same age, was one of the few villagers who didn't shun Zhang and often interacted with him. She was kind-hearted and sympathetic to Zhang's circumstances, eventually becoming his only close friend. Their relationship initially started as a simple friendship, but Lucy began noticing Zhang's solitary, mysterious demeanor and felt he needed help. She would often invite him to stroll around the village, hoping her presence could ease his loneliness. As a result, Zhang developed special feelings for Lucy, but due to his quiet nature and lack of confidence, he didn't know how to express them. Instead, he nurtured a growing jealousy towards those Lucy interacted with, torn between affection and obsession, becoming increasingly erratic over time. One August night in 1974, Lucy visited Zhang at his home. The two talked through the night, and Lucy eventually fell asleep in the living room. Zhang, caught between feelings of affection and obsession, decided not to wake her up. Instead, he sat silently, watching her sleep, savoring what he felt was the closest he had ever been to someone who truly cared about him. Suddenly, in an unconscious burst and consumed by wild thoughts, Zhang approached Lucy and cut her throat with a knife. Lucy woke up in intense pain, but Zhang continued his actions, completely out of control. Zhang's parents heard the screams and rushed to the living room. When they arrived, they found Lucy lying on the floor with a severe wound on her neck. Zhang's parents intervened, stopping him and calling villagers for help. Fortunately, Lucy survived, but the wound left a deep scar on her neck and lasting trauma. She couldn't understand why Zhang would do such a thing. Was it his desire to possess her that led to this? This incident shocked the entire village. Zhang was arrested and brought to trial on charges of attempted murder. People expected a heavy sentence, but thanks to his family's defense that he suffered from a mental disorder and was acting in a sleepwalking state, the court opted for a lighter sentence. Zhang received 6 months of reformatory labor as part of a psychological rehabilitation program. The court concluded that he had no real intent to kill and that his mental condition could improve through this program. This decision was controversial, and many villagers felt outraged, believing Zhang should have been imprisoned for a longer period. After completing his sentence, Zhang returned to the village. However, his image had become more ghastly and isolated than ever before. The villagers completely shunned him, and the incident with Lucy cast a dark shadow over him, pushing him further into depression. Zhang never saw Lucy again, but the psychological scar from this incident drove him deeper into a criminal path. He began to harbor violent thoughts in his solitude, with no one to talk to or confide in. Dark thoughts gradually consumed his mind, and the monster within him grew stronger. By 1979, Zhang committed another crime. This time, he killed a man from the village in a more brutal and calculated manner. The man was a friend of Zhang's brother. When he visited their home, Zhang conceived the idea of killing him. He waited until the man left, then quietly followed him. In a secluded area, Zhang attacked him with a rock multiple times to the head, killing him on the spot. He then dragged the body about 150 meters from the scene and buried it in a bush. His actions were witnessed by villagers. In 1979, Zhang was sentenced to death for the first time for intentional murder. However, after a short time, thanks to good behavior and compliance in prison, his sentence was reduced to life imprisonment, and he was eventually released in 1997. During his time in rehabilitation, Zhang learned various skills and became better at hiding his actions. Upon his return, he chose to live in solitude, speaking little and avoiding contact with neighbors. With a vacant stare and an eerie calmness, Zhang displayed no signs of being a criminal, and over time, the villagers began to forget his past as a murderer. However, he silently plotted his next crimes, determined that this time, he would leave no survivors to bear witness. At the scene, he refused to answer police questions, but once taken to the station, possibly haunted by his past imprisonment, he quickly admitted to the serial killings. He recounted each murder in detail as if describing a daily routine, astonishing the investigators. Zhang maintained a stoic expression, showing no emotion, fear, or concern about the consequences of his actions. Psychologists were brought in to assess Zhang's mental state, concluding that he suffered from schizophrenia and had antisocial personality disorder. However, they could not determine any clear motive, other than Zhang's morbid desire to kill to satisfy his twisted urges. He stated that he didn't target any specific individuals. His victims were merely young people who happened to pass by his house, becoming random targets. These victims had no connection to Zhang, other than being in the wrong place at the wrong time when he felt the urge to kill. Zhang also revealed that after each murder, he felt an odd sense of relief. He hid the victims' bodies in his home, dismembering some to make them easier to conceal. The remaining parts were discarded in remote areas where he believed no one would find them. The flesh he sold to villagers had been stripped of skin, as he sought a new thrill, the sensation of sharing his work. Zhang's emotionless confessions shocked the investigators. Chinese media and citizens were horrified by these revelations. They couldn't believe that a man once sentenced to death had been released, only to commit such horrific crimes. In 2012, Zhang Yongming stood trial. At the hearing, he maintained a cold demeanor, staring blankly at the judges and attendees, showing no remorse or fear of his potential sentence. Zhang's chillingly calm attitude only fueled public outrage. The victims' families demanded the highest penalty, not only for their loss, but also for the monstrous nature of Zhang's crimes. Zhang's case also put immense pressure on the Chinese government. The police and legal system's negligence in not properly supervising a previously sentenced murderer had led to catastrophic consequences. Amid the public's fury, the Chinese government decided to take severe action, not only against Zhang, but also against those responsible for overseeing him. Numerous police officials were dismissed for failing to prevent Zhang's crimes. In his final trial in July 2012, Zhang Yongming was charged with the murder of 17 people and officially sentenced to death. The sentence was widely praised, as many felt that only death could atone for the horrors he had caused. Zhang Yongming's case quickly became one of the most horrifying in Chinese history, a chilling reminder of the dangers posed by killers without clear motives. Although Zhang Yongming was executed, his case remains a cautionary tale about the dangers of serial killers with disturbed minds and the flaws within the legal supervision system. This concludes the video. Thank you for following this thrilling story. If you found this video intriguing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to not miss any upcoming stories.
On July 12, 2024, a horrifying incident occurred at a famous Taekwondo center in Yangju City, South Korea. The center's manager, a 30-year-old man A, cruelly stuffed a 5-year-old boy into a small hole in a gymnastics mat. This act led to the tragic death of the boy a few days later, plunging the victim's family into immense grief and sparking outrage across society over the inhumane cruelty. Was this an unexpected accident or a meticulously planned murder? This case still holds many unresolved details. Subscribe to our channel to uncover them with us right now. Yeongju, a small, peaceful city in Gyeonggi Province, South Korea, is known for its beautiful natural scenery and fresh air. The Taekwondo Center, where the incident occurred, was a renowned facility in Yeongju, primarily catering to children under 10 years old. The victim in the story was a boy named Choi Do-ha. He was born and raised in a middle-class family in the city. Do-ha was the youngest child in his family, cherished by his parents and siblings. From a young age, he was known for being clever, energetic, and very polite to everyone. Despite being only 3 years old, he was 110 centimeters tall and weighed 15 kilograms, making him significantly bigger than his peers. Seeing their son's potential, Do-ha's parents decided to enroll him in Taekwondo classes at a nearby center, hoping to improve his physical fitness and discipline after kindergarten. He began Taekwondo lessons in April 2024 and quickly became one of the standout students in his class. However, during his lessons, Do-ha sometimes came home with small bruises and complained that the coach occasionally scolded him harshly and was a bit rough. His parents believed this was just necessary discipline in martial arts training and encouraged Do-ha to persevere. Unfortunately, this inadvertently left Do-ha vulnerable to a heartless individual. On July 12th, after kindergarten, Do-ha, as usual, went to the Taekwondo Center and waited for his mother in the lounge. While playing alone in the lounge, Do-ha was called into the training area by the head coach, who was also the center owner, under the pretext of checking his skills. Everything seemed normal until that afternoon when peace in Yeongju was shattered by the wail of ambulance sirens, rushing Choi Do-ha to the hospital in cardiac arrest. When doctors lifted the blanket covering Do-ha's body, they discovered large bruises all over, especially on his neck and head, along with clear signs of prolonged suffocation. 2 staff members from the Taekwondo Center, with emotionless expressions, briefly stated, "It was just an accident. The boy fell while playing." They quickly left the hospital before anyone could ask further questions. Do-ha's family was also informed and rushed to the hospital. Seeing their son lying motionless on the hospital bed, his small body surrounded by machines, his mother screamed and asked the doctor, "Doctor, what happened to my child?" "We're not sure what happened yet, but this is not a simple accident. We'll do our best," the doctor cautiously replied. July 13, 2024. After a sleepless night by Do-ha's bedside, the family began to sense that something was amiss. Why did Do-ha's body have so many unusual injuries? Why hadn't anyone from the Taekwondo Center come to inquire about his condition? When the doctor informed the family, "These injuries are not from a simple fall. The boy shows signs of severe oxygen deprivation, possibly from strangulation or suffocation," it felt like a bolt of lightning to the mother's heart. The family immediately contacted the Taekwondo Center, demanding an explanation. However, all they received were evasions and excuses. "We're not sure. We just thought the boy fell while playing." This evasiveness fueled their anger and suspicion. Meanwhile, the doctors concluded, "This situation cannot be explained by an accident. This could be a case of severe violence. I think the family should contact the police." The family decided they could no longer remain silent. They reported the incident to the police, demanding an official investigation to uncover the truth. On July 13, 2024, after receiving the family's report, the police immediately took on the case and began their investigation. Their first stop was the Taekwondo Center, where Do-ha was enrolled. At the Taekwondo Center, the police requested to meet the head of the center, the main coach, Mr. A, to provide information about the incident. With a calm demeanor, he stated, "This was just an unfortunate accident. The boy was playing carelessly and fell." When questioned about specific details, Mr. A continued to defend his statement, "I wasn't present at the time of the incident, but I'm certain no one did anything wrong. It was just an unfortunate event." When I returned after stepping out, I saw the boy lying on the floor, unconscious, so I immediately took him to the hospital. However, when the police asked further about why Do-ha had so many bruises on his body, Mr. A appeared slightly flustered. Perhaps he bumped into something while playing. He was naturally very active. The police recorded A's statement, but to ascertain exactly what happened that day, they decided to review the center's CCTV footage. At this point, an unexpected issue arose. All CCTV footage from the time of the incident had been completely erased. This was a clear sign of a deliberate cover-up. Confronted with this, Mr. A offered no convincing explanation, simply saying he didn't know why the footage was missing. This did not fool the investigators. At this point, Mr. A became the prime suspect, as he was the only one with access to the CCTV system to delete the footage. On July 15, 2024, the police summoned an employee of the center who had accompanied Mr. A in taking Choi Do-ha to the hospital. This employee, identified as Mr. B, was an assistant coach who usually worked under Mr. A's strict supervision. Mr. B stated, "I received an urgent call from Mr. A asking me to come immediately to help take the boy to the hospital. When I arrived, I saw the boy in a critical condition. However, Mr. A said it was just a minor accident during training and instructed me not to say anything further." When asked more details about Do-ha's condition, Mr. B replied that the boy was no longer breathing. His face was blue, and it was clear he had been in this state before being taken to the hospital. Mr. B also revealed that Mr. A appeared very tense and repeatedly reminded him not to disclose any other information. Mr. B disclosed, "Mr. A was very strict in his training methods. We weren't allowed to intervene in his sessions, especially his one-on-one training with students. Anyone who questioned him would be reprimanded immediately." With Mr. B's testimony, the police noticed significant contradictions in Mr. A's statements. Combined with the deleted CCTV footage, it became increasingly clear that this was no ordinary accident, but a deliberate act being concealed. CCTV footage now became the key to the case. The police immediately collaborated with technology experts to recover the deleted footage from the Taekwondo Center's surveillance system. The experts used advanced data recovery tools to conduct a deep scan of the hard drive, gradually extracting remnants of the erased videos. At this point, the truth of the case began to surface, revealing a story far different from the information initially provided to the police. At around 7:04 p.m. on July 12, 2024, the center director, Mr. A, entered the waiting area where Choi Do-ha was playing a board game with Teacher C. For unknown reasons, Mr. A suddenly used excessive force, stretching Do-ha's legs roughly 60 times and asking, "Do you want to exercise?" Do-ha, terrified and in pain, responded that he didn't want to. However, ignoring his refusal, Mr. A violently dragged the boy from the waiting area to the training zone. In the training area, Mr. A continued to abuse Do-ha, even pushing him into two other students nearby, who were horrified by the scene. He then swung Do-ha around in the air, hung him upside down on a gym mat about 1.2 meters high, and left him dangling with only his feet supporting his weight. Next, Mr. A forced Do-ha into a small gap, just 18 centimeters wide and 23 centimeters high, inside a rolled-up gym mat. To ensure Do-ha couldn't escape, he even struck the boy's back forcefully, pushing him deeper into the mat. After stuffing the boy into the mat, Mr. A left to take a phone call, ignoring Do-ha's inverted position and desperate cries for help. "Please save me. Help me." Teacher C, who witnessed the incident, asked Mr. A if the boy could be taken out, but Mr. A shook his head and continued his call. Teacher C then turned to Do-ha and said, "Just wait." At around 7:33 p.m., 24 minutes after Do-ha was stuffed into the mat, Teacher C told Coach B, "Do-ha is still in the mat. Poor boy." However, neither dared to intervene out of fear of defying Mr. A. At 7:36 p.m., unable to endure the situation any longer, Coach B pulled Do-ha out of the mat after 27 minutes of entrapment. By then, Do-ha had stopped breathing, his face was blue from oxygen deprivation, and his pulse was faint. Coach B carried the motionless boy into Mr. A's office. Mr. A, upon seeing this, panicked and attempted CPR on the boy. At 7:38 p.m., realizing Do-ha was still unresponsive, Mr. A decided to take him to the ENT clinic on the floor below instead of the hospital, contradicting his earlier statement. However, upon arrival, the doctors confirmed that Do-ha's heart had already stopped. They immediately performed CPR and called 199 emergency services to transfer him to the ICU. After accompanying B to take Choi to the hospital, Mr. A returned to the Taekwondo Center and deleted all CCTV data from the center, attempting to cover up his actions. However, now all of his wrongdoing has been uncovered. The restored CCTV data does not lie. On July 13, 2024, an arrest warrant for Mr. A was issued. The police detained him for further investigation. On July 14, 2024, the Uijeongbu District Court held a pre-arrest hearing. Based on evidence and testimony, an official arrest warrant was issued for Mr. A. On July 19, 2024, during his transfer to the prosecutor's office, Mr. A unexpectedly broke into tears, claiming he had always loved Choi and asserting that the boy was the child I cherished the most. Investigators noted this behavior as an attempt to deflect blame and garner sympathy to reduce his responsibility in the case. Regarding the deletion of surveillance footage, Mr. A admitted to erasing the CCTV data after the incident, citing that he was too frightened by what had happened. While Mr. A was in custody, the police's technical team continued their efforts to fully recover the deleted CCTV footage from the Taekwondo Center. The recovered footage revealed a series of abuses against Choi spanning 2 months, from May until the incident. Police confirmed that Choi had been mistreated by Mr. A at least 140 times. Despite the indisputable evidence provided by the CCTV footage, Mr. A continued to claim that his actions were harmless jokes. "I never intended to hurt him. It was all accidental, and he always smiled around me," Mr. A insisted. The evidence not only documented Mr. A's abusive actions during the incident, but also captured numerous instances where he forced Choi to perform dangerous exercises, frequently using violence to coerce him. These images became irrefutable arguments completely disproving Mr. A's defense. On July 24, 2024, 11 days after the incident, Choi Do-ha was officially pronounced dead due to brain death. His family was devastated, and the case sparked outrage across South Korea, with major broadcasters and newspapers covering the incident extensively. After the case was exposed, 3 other parents filed complaints, claiming their children had also been abused by Mr. A at the Taekwondo Center. They provided information about bruises and abnormal behavior observed in their children after attending the center. These children were much luckier than Choi. To better understand the pain Choi Do-ha endured, a team of experts recreated the situation. An adult man was asked to enter a gym mat in an inverted position, similar to the victim's. As soon as he entered the mat, the pressure on his head and chest significantly increased. Within less than a minute, a carbon dioxide meter emitted an alert, signaling dangerously high levels and the need for ventilation. The carbon dioxide levels quickly reached the maximum threshold of 99999 ppm, forcing the participant to end the experiment after 2 minutes and 26 seconds, signaling for help to exit the mat. This reenactment demonstrated the life-threatening danger of the situation. The participant later shared, "It felt like trying to breathe underwater without any air. Despite my best efforts, the sensation of suffocation was overwhelming. Without safety measures, I would certainly have died in that situation." Experts concluded that no one, not even an adult, could endure such conditions for long. This further highlighted the cruelty and danger of Mr. A's actions toward Choi. On August 27, 2024, the first trial was held at the Uijeongbu District Court. Mr. A continued to deny all charges of intentional murder, insisting that his actions were jokes and not meant to cause harm. Mr. A argued that he lost control of the situation and tried to portray himself as a victim of work-related stress. This defense was rejected by prosecutors, who presented CCTV evidence to prove deliberate abuse. On October 22, 2024, Mr. A's subordinate instructors were summoned as witnesses and questioned separately. Some admitted they had witnessed Mr. A's violent behavior towards young students, but were too afraid to speak out for fear of losing their jobs. The CCTV data and testimony from instructors revealed Mr. A's true nature, a person who fabricated a friendly facade to conceal systematic violence. Prosecutors concluded that Mr. A not only caused Choi's death, but also abused many other children. However, as of now, Mr. A's sentence has not been finalized. Authorities are working tirelessly to compile a comprehensive case for the most appropriate punishment for Mr. A. Meanwhile, Choi's family and other victimized parents decided to form a group advocating for stricter supervision of physical education centers to ensure no other child suffers the same pain. Some broadcasters, when reporting on the case, used the name Ian instead of the victim's real name. This was at the request of Choi's family, who wished to honor the boy in the way he had always dreamed of being remembered, even in heaven. Choi's family explained that when he was alive, He always dreamed of becoming a strong and capable person like the character Ian he admired. Using this name was their way of preserving his beautiful memory in everyone's hearts. In the end, Mr. A will undoubtedly face a deserving punishment. When further updates on the case are available, we will inform you as soon as possible. This video concludes here. Thank you for following this gripping story. If you found this video compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to not miss our next intriguing stories.